Chance to interview Governor Brown today one-on-one. I asked her about the protests and her plan to end the violence, and I wanted to get her thoughts on some criticisms of how she addressed the weekend protests and why, despite the request from Portland's mayor and the president, she's refused to call out the National Guard. Here's that interview now, in depth. If I can, for this first question, can you take off your governor's hat for me just a little bit? And I'd like to get your gut reaction when you heard over the weekend that someone was shot to death at a protest in Portland.
I was horrified. My heart goes out to the family. This is really devastating to, frankly, the entire country.
I wanted to give you a chance to kind of respond to some of the calls that we've been getting, some criticisms about your statement that came out after the shooting, in which you condemned Patriot Prayer and also armed militias. You know, as far as our reporting is concerned, the victim was actually, we believe, a member of Patriot Prayer. And, you know, some of the calls that we've gotten feel as though you kind of painted that caravan with a broad brush. We've been careful, you know, not to call all protesters as being violent. Do you have any problem with the families that may have been involved in that caravan who simply wanted to show their support for law enforcement?
Look, I think it's really important that Oregonians be able to exercise their right to free speech, whether it's supporting our law enforcement or issuing a clarion call to ending racism. I ask that everyone do so and do it peacefully.
But you don't have a problem with people who, of course, want to show their support for a separate protest for law enforcement?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think the challenge that we are facing in this country is that our President Trump, is sowing the seeds of hatred and division. And we are seeing these seeds bear fruit in communities around the entire country. Communities like Charlottesville, Kenosha, and unfortunately in Portland. It has to end.
You came up with a plan on Sunday night, what you would like to see happen to deal with some of the violence we've been seeing in downtown Portland. It asked for some of the cooperation of the surrounding counties as well as Gresham. Did you lay the groundwork with these counties? Because frankly, we talked to some of leaders in those counties, and the first they heard about this plan was over the weekend when you announced it. Do you think you'll get buy-in, and what'd you do in preparation for this?
We had been working on this plan for a handful of days. I certainly have reached out to local elected officials, but this is a comprehensive, unified law enforcement approach. We are asking for local jurisdictions to assist the city of Portland. This is routine mutual aid agreements that have happened over the years, possibly decades, in this region. And we think that it's really important at this point in time for the region to come together to help end the violence on the streets of Portland.
And Governor, you think that the counties will cooperate?
I certainly hope so. I am confident that the city of Portland will do everything they can to ensure that there is a welcome hand.
Let's talk about the National Guard, if we could, for just a second. Mayor Wheeler, in his address to the city of Portland over the weekend, mentioned that he had reached out to you to ask for help from the National Guard twice. You know, I'd like you to respond to that if you can, and why maybe you feel that the National Guard isn't the answer to the situation.
Well, first of all, Mayor Wheeler made those requests months ago, so it's not particularly pertinent to the recent events. We are using the National Guard for critically important duties. For example, right now, they have assisted the employment department in making phone calls to Oregonians so Oregonians know where their cases are. They have helped deliver protective equipment to communities around the state. And unfortunately, if fire season gets much worse, we're going to need their assistance in supporting firefighting efforts. So that's really important work. They have the training. What we need in terms of the city of Portland is trained law enforcement.
One of the other things that you want in your plan is to engage the community leaders. Do you have any concrete plans yet on who would be involved, where it would happen, and when it would happen?
The unfortunate part of the destruction, the property destruction and the arson happening on the streets of Portland is that it's a distraction from the critically important work we need to do to reimagine, re-envision, recreate our law enforcement system. What does community policing look like? What does public safety really look like in our Black, in our African American, in our Latinx, in our Indigenous communities? This is critically important work that we need to do collectively. That's where I want to focus the conversation moving forward.
That was the governor this afternoon. You can hear more of that interview, including Oregon's battle against COVID-19 and when students might return to class. That's on our website, kptv.com, and the Fox 12 app.